Hello everyone, this is Aussie Select and today I am doing a prediction for the Senate for the upcoming 2025 Australian federal election. So I did a video on the House of Representatives the other day, but I thought I would split this up into two videos because I have a lot to say in this video. Things have actually started to get quite interesting in the Senate, and just on Friday we had the ballot draw, so we know what order on the ballot paper the different parties and candidates will be listed on. As you can see here, I've pre-filled all of the senators that are keeping their seats after winning them at the last federal election. Two of these ones I've labelled as independents actually have their own party. That's Fatima Payman in Australia's Voice and Tammy Tyrell. I've kept them as independents because otherwise I'd need to add more people onto here, and I don't really want to do that. And I think, the chances of either of them picking up seats is pretty unlikely. So yeah, sorry guys, you are independents to me. But as we could see here, the coalition have 14 seats, Labor 12, Greens 5, One Nation 1, Palmer 1, and Independents are 3. And all of these are not up for election. This election, they're all staying on for another 3 years. An independent who is up for election is David Van in Victoria, who I believe got kicked out of the coalition, and I believe he's running as ungrouped. And I think somebody suggested that he's just doing that to get some kind of retirement benefit or something. And of course, Jared Rennick, former member of the LNP, is also up for election, and he has started a new party called People First, and he will be contesting in Queensland. So I just want to briefly touch on the news that Jacinta Price, the Shadow Minister of Government Efficiency herself, the Smooge, said that she wants to make Australia great again, and I feel like this is probably the worst week for her to be saying such a thing after, Trump has been sort of doing gymnastics on tariffs. I think, yeah, this was a pretty bad gaffe. I mean, it could be argued that she was dog whistling or something, or she did it intentionally to try to court over some of those right-wing minor party voters that the coalition are believing they're losing. I don't know. It could be intentional. I really don't know. But I'm assuming this probably won't be a net help for the coalition. There was a YouGov poll out on Friday which had Labor on 52.5 of the two-party preferred, and then there was also a rolling average poll of seats as well that came out from Redbridge, which had the same result for 20 marginal seats, with the Labor Party ahead 52.5 against the coalition. Now, I will say again, I think things will come in a bit before the election on the two-party preferred, as well as the primary vote. Look at this shocking primary vote for the coalition. I also think maybe the polls are overestimating Labor a little bit. That happened last time. The final news poll was I think it was 53-47, and Labor ended up getting closer to 52. So yeah, I don't think things are quite as dire for the coalition as what this is presenting, but I do think situations like this will not be helping them to sort of go back to that 50-50 result that they would need with any hope to actually get more seats than Labor in the election. Regardless, I think that unless the Labor Party makes some kind of massive misstep, I think that the coalition is absolutely screwed in the Senate, and I will go over why in this video. So One on Survivor has provided me with this little table which combines, I believe, the most recent statewide polls of federal voting intention of every polling company and sort of makes an average. And then this is the swing from the first preference since the last election. I think Liberals should be Liberal and Nationals. And then over here is the two-party preferred with sort of a high preference flow to the Labor Party, and then a two-party preferred with the low preference flow. Just editor's note, the high two-party preferred here, which is the Labor two-party preferred, by the way, is from the 2022 election, and the low is from the 2019 election. So that's why there's a variance, because the Labor Party did considerably worse on preference flows in the 2019 election. But I think the primary votes will give us more clues than the two-party preferred, because as I've said in the last couple of videos, these days the two-party preferred is becoming more and more meaningless, especially when we're working out the Senate, where there's the case for exhaustion of votes and stuff like that. So let's go state by state. So let's look at New South Wales first. So New South Wales has always been sort of the bellwether state. It tends to get a two-party preferred result pretty similar to the national two-party preferred. And these days, it always tends to have the same result, basically, which is 3 coalition, 2 Labour, 1 Green. I don't think anything is going to be changing this time around. The One Nation Party has a pretty high preference vote, but so does the coalition. I mean, it really depends if the coalition keeps on sort of floundering in the polls. So the Labour Party actually drew first on the ballot, but I mean, I don't know if that will really sort of help them that much because I don't think they're getting 3 seats. Like the Greens are actually polling pretty well in New South Wales. They're actually getting a couple of percentage point swing towards them on the primary vote. So I don't think we're going to get like a situation where we're going to get like 3 Labour seats or something like that. But I will state that the primary vote a party gets in the Senate tends to be a little bit lower than what they sort of poll, maybe like 1 to 3% points lower. And in the most recent YouGov polls, the coalition have had some pretty sort of dire results where they're sort of indicating to get sort of a low 30s percentage in the Senate. So if we go on to the 2022 results for New South Wales, the coalition actually did pretty well. They got almost 37%. And I think replicating that is going to be pretty difficult for them. I think they'll probably end up getting closer to sort of 34-35%, maybe even less if like things keep on going in the trajectory they're now on. It really is a question of if they can get low enough for the One Nation Party to actually overtake them in New South Wales. So I'm just seeing where One Nation sort of got on the ballot paper. It looks like they got a little bit before the Liberal Party. Yeah, so Pauline Hanson's One Nation is up here, and then the coalition is like down here somewhere. Yeah. So that might help her a little bit. You know, there is always that psychological aspect of being, you know, like quite early on the ballot paper that does sort of help your party like a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I think that more than ever, the One Nation Party actually has a chance in New South Wales. But if I go with the idea that the coalition might reclaim some ground before the actual election, and in some polls like Result Strategic, actually the coalition is not doing too badly, I think that the coalition will probably end up with 3 seats in New South Wales and will have a status quo result. Although, yeah, I think One Nation absolutely has a good chance there. I don't really think there's any other parties which have much of a chance in New South Wales of picking up that last seat. The two-party preferred is too close to 50-50 to suggest like some kind of like random like leftist party or something will get a seat. And One Nation, it seems to be, as I've said before, that the sort of right-wing minor party vote is sort of consolidating around One Nation at this point. So yeah, I think probably 3 coalition here, but yeah, One Nation absolutely has a chance. So moving on to Victoria. So Victoria was interesting because in the last federal election, the coalition missed out on winning 3 seats there, but it looks like that there will be a bit of a swing to the coalition on the primary vote, according to One on Survivors aggregate. It's still sort of low. It's like only at 36%. And as I said, like they'll probably poll a little bit under that in the election. Last time they got 32%. So I think they'll do a little bit better than that. Maybe they'll get about 34%. And that might actually just save their hide. But another thing that is definitely going to help them is that the coalition actually drew first on the ballot paper. So they'll be very happy about that because they'll get a sizable amount of the donkey vote, I would imagine. Interesting here that the Nationals are like 4th on the ticket. I don't know why that is. We also have the Legalized Cannabis Party 2nd on the ticket. So legalized cannabis, I think probably, if not other than the coalition and One Nation, probably have the best chances of Victoria. So they've definitely got the best chances out of like sort of another left-wing party getting a seat. That includes the Labour Party for that matter. Like the Labour Party is only polling like around 30% in Victoria. That's pretty dire. Although I think in recent times things have gotten a little bit better for them. Like they're ahead on the two-party preferred again, according to this latest YouGov. Like back here in February, it was when things were looking really bad. Like look at this, like Redbridge and Accent. I think these were like the seat tracking polls had like this massive sort of blowout result for the coalition. But yeah, they seem to be doing a little bit better this time. But they probably won't do as well in the two-party preferred as last election, and probably won't do as well on the first preferences. If they got 31% last time, I think they'll probably get just under 30%, maybe. Just the state party is just really putting a big drag on the Labour Party, I think, in Victoria. So yeah, problem for One Nation is that their primary vote in Victoria is just not very high. And I know that in the 2022 federal election, the United Australia Party managed to get a seat with only 4% of the votes. But I think part of that came down to just the coalition having such a crummy primary vote themselves. So with them being first on the ballot, them recovering a little bit, and Labour Party being so unpopular, I think I'm willing to give this to the coalition as well with 3 seats, just like New South Wales. Legalised cannabis would have a chance if somehow the coalition primary vote would drop even further. The most recent YouGov polls had the coalition primary vote entering sort of not so great territory, but still, somewhat holding up. I mean, always a chance for the legalized cannabis party here, but with the two-party preferred at the moment. I know I said don't worry about it, but like it is sort of an indication of like sort of the mood, and there is sort of like still like a very sort of 50-50 mood in Victoria between sort of left-wing parties and right-wing parties, and that would produce a 3 left-wing party, 3 right-wing party split like you're seeing here, and like what you saw last election too, where this was Lydia Thorpe who got elected as a Green. Oh yeah, she doesn't have her own political party either. I didn't mention that. Anyway, so moving on to Queensland. Coalition primary vote is quite high. It's 42. And the quota to get 3 seats is, I think, something like 43%, something around that. So they're almost at 3 quarters in their own right. But I do think that these polls are maybe overestimating the coalition primary vote a little bit. I think probably this primary vote will be fragmented between a bunch of other sort of right-wing minor parties, at least when it comes to the Senate. And we do have quite a lot of right-wing minor parties running this election. I know a lot of them, they want to sort of consolidate under one banner, but that unfortunately doesn't seem to be what's happening. So we have the Trumpeter Patriots here, who got second on the ballot. The Socialist Alliance actually got first. We've got Jared Rennick, People First, in a joint ticket with the Katters Australia Party. We've got the Great Australian Party, which I didn't even realize that was still registered. We've got the Family First Party, and we've got the Libertarian Party, and of course, Pauline Hanson's One Nation. So that's sort of 6 right-wing minor parties, and you could argue that maybe like some people might view sort of like Jackie Lambie and like the Citizens Party as sort of right-wing. I don't think they are. I think they're both left to center, but they could be interpreted as right-wing, and maybe you might get a sizable number of right-wing voters who are so sort of put off by the coalition that they might put these right-wing minor parties 1 to 6 in the Senate and then leave the rest of their Senate paper blank. And I think the coalition would be really worried about that, because that would mean their vote exhausts. It doesn't go to the coalition, and it means that the coalition has a chance of having that last seat be beaten by Labour. So I think that the Greens at this point are a shoe-in to get a seat. I don't think they're going to miss out. And obviously Labour will get one. One Nation will get one. They're polling pretty well. I'll get to that in a second. And the coalition will get at least 2. So it's that last seat, whether it'll go to the coalition or Labour, that really matters. And the polling is sort of indicating that things are staying pretty sort of status quo in Queensland. As you can see here, there isn't sort of like a huge... I mean, there is sort of like a bit of a shift to sort of the Liberal Party here, like about 2%, and then One Nation here, 1.51%. But against the Labour and the Greens, it's not that much. And I do think that both of these votes, the One Nation vote and the Liberal Party vote, are a little bit overstated. If we go on to the most recent YouGov, and these YouGov polls, the sample sizes are not the best, but the One Nation Party actually did pretty well on the one before last and have now come down a little bit. And then the Results Strategic, the One Nation Party got 12%, which is pretty good for them. So I do think that Pauline Hanson will have no trouble winning her seat back. And the Labour Party are polling pretty anemically. They only got 25% last time, managed to get 2 seats. I think they'll probably get a little bit under that this time, maybe about 23%. So it's going to be tough for them, but it also might be tough for the coalition to get 3 seats. It's going to be like a real battle between those two. With trends sort of going the way they're going, I think that the Labour Party will probably hang on to 2 seats, but that contest is looking pretty close, I have to say. I'm actually surprised that there has been sort of an anti-Dutton coalition trend in the last couple of weeks, but it feels like from the polls that I've looked at, that the coalition is actually sort of hanging on a little bit. Like, look at these really high two-party votes. I'm not sure whether to trust some of these two-party votes, by the way, of how they've worked some of them out. But it's obvious that the coalition primary vote is holding up to a degree in Queensland. So there really is this divergence going on, it seems, that like the rest of the country is moving away from the coalition, but Queensland is staying pretty strong for them. And it looks like they're probably going to get like maybe a 2% swing towards them on the two-party preferred at the election. Maybe getting 3 Senate seats is a reason for Jacinta Price to say that she wants to make Australia great again. I don't know. But yeah, wouldn't be surprised if we got 3 coalition seats there. But as I've said before, Jared Rennick, I think, has a pretty high profile. I think he's going to get a couple of percentage. And I'm just thinking maybe people who might vote for him might just put all these right-wing minor parties, and then the coalition will miss out on getting his preferences. So that's why I'm thinking the Labour Party will manage to get 2 seats there, but really sort of a hard call there in Queensland. So Western Australia, there was this YouGov the week before last, which was kind of odd. Like the coalition primary vote was at like 36, and then Labor was down to 30. Like it was a big jump from 13, and then it's gone back up again another 8 points, and the coalition primary vote has really fallen like 30%. I think is this like the worst result that they've had? Yeah, it is. So my vibes that I'm getting about WA is that the Labour Party does have a chance to win 3 seats again there. If we go on to One on Survivors aggregates, they're polling around 38%, which is definitely up there. But the One Nation Party has actually really sort of started the poll really well recently in WA. Beforehand, they were not looking too great. It's like 5 or 6%, so kind of similar to Victoria, but recently these last YouGov polls have been really good for them. And then the other vote also in this freshwater strategy poll was actually pretty high as well. Like One Nation didn't do that well at the state election, but I think in the state election, One Nation competing with the WA Nationals, which I think they did pour quite a bit of money and resources into the state election. So that's sort of suppressed the One Nation vote maybe a little bit. But yeah, One Nation is doing really well, and the coalition's primary vote is really lacking. So I think at this point, the coalition's chances of getting 3 seats are pretty much over. I think it's over. I don't know who is going to win that last seat. I know the Greens will win 1, even though their primary vote is not the best there. They'll win 1, and the coalition will win 2. But yeah, that last seat, it's difficult to say if it will be someone from the left or the right. The One Nation obviously has a big shoe in there. I think that's probably my bet. There's also the WA Nats, who we haven't seen really any polling of how well they might do. There's also legalized cannabis. Yeah, One Nation have actually pulled ahead in the polls recently, and I think it's a much better chance that they'll actually take that last seat as compared to the coalition. I think it's over for the coalition. So if we go to the last federal election, I just want to see how well Labor did on the primary vote. So yeah, they got actually only about 34.5%, which they're sort of polling enough to sort of get that again, which makes me think that they do have a good chance of getting that final seat or helping another sort of left-wing minor party get that final seat. So yeah, we could get a shock result for the legalized cannabis party at that stage. I guess it just depends if sort of like the primary vote for the Labour Party sort of drops between now and the election. But I know that today, Albo is doing his campaign launch in WA. So there's obviously a strong emphasis from the Labor Party to get a good result in WA and maybe a hope to get 3 Senate seats again. So I wouldn't call it out at this stage or call out, legalize cannabis or something. But my prediction at the moment is the coalition will not get 3 seats in WA, and I'm not counting the WA Nationals as the coalition. When I say that, they're not in coalition with the Liberal Party in WA, even if like the betting sites like to think they are. But yeah, that's WA. That's a big change from my prediction sort of earlier on where I thought like, oh yeah, the coalition will get 3 easy there. Things have really consolidated sort of away from them in the last couple of months. On to South Australia. So my prediction has been for a long time that we're going to get 2 Labor, 2 Liberal, 1 Green, and 1 One Nation. Things have sort of like moved a little bit away from One Nation and then sort of come back to them. So if we go on to the opinion polls for SA, like all throughout sort of 2024, they were polling really well in these news polls. And then sort of like, things went a little bit sort of like for them. And then they've gone back to polling a little bit better again. SA is also like WA that the coalition are not polling very well. They managed to get 3 seats last time off a pretty low primary vote. Actually, if we go down to SA, they managed to get 3 seats off 34%. I think that they will get lower than this. Like the aggregate has them on 33.25, but I think they'll do a bit worse in the Senate. So again, the coalition will not win 3 seats. I'm counting that out. The Labor Party don't look like they can win 3 seats either. The primary vote there is just too low. The Greens are fine. They'll win their seat. One Nation, most recent YouGov had them on 12%, which is a really good result for them. So again, my prediction is that the One Nation party will probably take that final seat. Also, sort of the left-right split is sort of pretty close to sort of 50-50, which makes me indicate that sort of a left-wing minded party probably doesn't have much of a chance there. I don't know what you would say Rex Patrick is. I mean, he's definitely left of center, but I don't know if voters sort of interpret him that way. Rex Patrick ran as the Rex Patrick team in 2022 and did pretty poorly. Like, here's Rex Patrick down here. 2%. Yeah, I mean, so and now he's running for the Jackie Lambie network. I know that she's like the least unpopular politician in Australia, but I don't know if voters are going to sort of really resonate with the Jackie Lambie name in South Australia. And I don't know if Rex Patrick's profile is really that much higher than it was back in 2022 anyway, when he ran in a ticket which was literally under his name. You could argue that maybe the dissatisfaction with sort of the major parties might improve his result a little bit more, because this election is going to be like the double dislikers election where people dislike both major parties. And I guess like Nick Xenophon isn't running, and he, I think, sort of like cramped Rex Patrick's style a little bit because they're sort of similar candidates. So I think Rex under the Jackie Lambie network will do slightly better than he did back in 2022, maybe get something like 3% or something like that. But One Nation have just been polling really well. They're definitely polling better than they were back in 2022. And then obviously there's like the anti-immigration sentiment, and then the consolidation around One Nation. Like, Trumpeter Patriots is it's not going to do well this election. I think they've been a flop, and I think people have no idea what they stand for. So the right-wing minor party will consolidate under One Nation, and so I think that will be what will help the One Nation party succeed in South Australia, and will get them another seat there. And I think it's more likely they'll get a seat there than in WA. So on to Tasmania. Tasmania is sort of a tricky one because we don't really have much polling for there, so we sort of have to sort of just make sort of guesses. We know the Greens will win at least 1. They poll really well in Tasmania. I don't see that changing with that whole like salmon fishing stuff. And we know the coalition will win 2. There was suggestions of the coalition possibly winning 3 here at one point, and maybe at the expense of Labor. I really should be putting Lambie here and then this seat blank. I really should do this. But Tasmania has, for at least as far as I remember, been sort of definitely a left of center seat, and tends to have like a 2-party preferred of around 54 to 55% to the Labor Party. So the chance of the coalition getting 2 seats and then also say Pauline Hanson's daughter, I believe her name is Lee Hanson, running for the One Nation Party, also getting a seat. I think that's quite unlikely. Like, let's have a look at how One Nation did at the previous Senate election. They got about 4%, which you could say, oh, that, like the UAP got 4% and they managed to get a seat in Parliament. Well, I think that was sort of a different situation. They didn't have someone like Lambie, who's this sort of third party candidate for them to compete with. I think, if anything, it's just going to sort of eat into the Liberal Party vote, maybe cut them down to like the sort of the late 20s, maybe something like 28% or something like that, and then boost the One Nation vote a little bit. And then the One Nation preferences might just, help like Jackie Lambie get reelected or something like that. I just think with only 6 seats, there's sort of like too many cooks in the kitchen, and it makes it very difficult for One Nation to nab another seat there when Jackie Lambie is still very well known in the seat. And I know she's had issues, but I think she's still pretty well liked in Tasmania. And I don't think, Pauline Hanson's daughter is going to beat her at that. So the ACT, there was also a suggestion quite a while ago that the Labor Party might be in trouble there. I think that suggestion is that's not happening. It's going to be David Pocock and it's going to be Labor. Yeah, the coalition's pretty much given a complete middle finger to the ACT. I think they've completely given up on the territory. So yeah, the Liberal Party vote, out of curiosity, we'll sort of look at it and sort of just make a guess. Obviously, we don't really have polling for it, but I think the Liberal Party vote is going to drop like below 20 at this point. And then Pocock is going to go up to like, I don't know, maybe 26, and the Labour Party vote will drop. And I don't know what will happen with the Greens. They already dropped like a lot last time. Doesn't look like Kim Rubenstein is running, so that might actually help the Greens' primary vote a little bit, and of course David Pocock's primary vote as well. But that's pretty conclusive. And then in the Northern Territory, there's not going to be any change there. It's just going to be Labor and the coalition. So I think the only real possible things that could change in the next couple of weeks is if the coalition primary vote keeps on dipping, they are going to go into territory where they have to start worrying about these last Senate seats in New South Wales and Victoria. But if the coalition somehow manages to sort of improve their prospects, then they will have a chance of actually getting these last Senate seats in Western Australia and South Australia. But I think at this point, it's pretty much over. It's going to be somebody else. The coalition for a while have sort of relied on their ability to get, like, in almost every state, 3 senators. And I think as time is going by, they're running into the Labor Party problem where the Greens are sort of outflanking them from the left. And now they're getting sort of outflanked from the right by these, like, right-wing minor parties. And if they were able to sort of consolidate under one party, like essentially like the Greens do, the Greens don't really have any real competition. If the right-wing minor parties were able to consolidate under one banner, that's when the coalition would really be shaking in their boots. But unfortunately, their vote is split between all these random minor parties, and I think a lot of those people will slot in the coalition somewhere in their top 6 candidates, which is what ultimately helps the coalition manage to actually win 3 seats. So too much preference diluting, I guess would be the technical term. Anyway, so this result will be decent for the Labor Party. They can pass legislation with just 2 crossbenchers. They got a lot to pick from here. Of course, if we get this result where the coalition managed to get 3 seats in Queensland, the Labor Party have to negotiate with a little bit more, but it's still not too bad for them, really. So yeah, pretty good for the Labor Party. And I just want to show you guys sort of the best result that we could get for the coalition. I don't think in Tasmania we're going to see them getting 3 seats. I think that's just a bit too much of a hard ask, but this will be the best result for the coalition. And if we look at what they have to do to pass stuff, like look at this, 32, 34, 35, 36. So they need all crossbenchers bar 1 to pass legislation. So if somehow the coalition actually managed to get into government in the lower house, the Senate is going to be absolutely stuffed for them, and they will need to probably go to a double dissolution election very, very soon to actually get anything done. So definitely not good news for the coalition at all in any metric at this point in time. As I said, in the polls, I think things are going to narrow up a little bit. But when your best case scenario is you'll be forced to do a double dissolution probably in your first year of governments, then it's not very good news in my opinion. So as I said, I think probably what will happen is we'll get some extra One Nation senators, and I think there probably will be on the news this big sort of idea that, you know, the far right sort of is moving into Australia with these additional senators. Obviously, we've seen that in like Europe, and I guess you could argue America as well. I don't really know how much like sort of having like 4 One Nation senators would really do to sort of like the political zeitgeist of Australia. I don't know if that will really, you know, cause that much of a rupture. The One Nation Party did actually have a couple more senators back in the day after the 2016 double dissolution, so it's not like it's unheard of for the One Nation Party to have like 4 senators. I guess when they're starting to win like a lot of seats in like half Senate elections, I guess that is sort of notable. But I think it's more of a condition of the coalition primary vote deteriorating than actually necessarily the rise of the far right, because it just is a case that One Nation Party is like the only party with sort of a high enough primary vote to actually be able to pick up some of these last Senate seats. I guess if the One Nation Party manages to pick up like, and if they somehow make their way into Tasmania as well, that's when it would allude to the One Nation Party sort of stepping into sort of mainstream party status. I don't know if you could really say that when in the Queensland election, the One Nation Party failed to pick up any seats in the lower house. Like, I don't think the One Nation Party really are on track to pick up any seats in the lower house of the federal parliament. But I think it would be sort of notable if that kind of situation did end up happening. But I think One Nation do have a shoe-in to pick up at least one extra senator this election. Not sure if it's South Australia, not sure if it's Western Australia, not sure if it might be somewhere else. Definitely their strongest election, at least since 2016. Of course, in 2016, they were aided by there being the quota being halved. I will maybe do a video looking at sort of the House of Representatives candidate list and making sort of observations about where different candidates ended up on the ballot, because sometimes being first on the ballot does actually really help. Like Libertarian Party got first in SA. I don't think that's going to really help them much, because I don't think sort of the Libertarian brand is really that big like anywhere really, and I think like obviously the One Nation Party is sort of way ahead of them when it comes to the most notable right-wing brands. Sustainable Australia got first in Tasmania. WA Great Australian Party got first, and then we've already sort of talked about the others. So thank you for watching, everybody. That has been the video on the Senate election. Very nice picture of Jared Rennick they have here. It looks like it's from like a 6 News interview or something. Curious to see how Australia's Voice will do. I don't think they'll get very far in my opinion. And before we go, I just actually want to mention that when it comes to People First, he originally said that he was only going to just run himself, but now he's running in like House of Representatives seats and stuff like that. It's really weird. So he obviously changed his mind about that. Anyway, yeah, big winner will be Pauline Hanson. Big loser will be the coalition. That is my prediction for the upcoming Senate election. Thank you for watching, everyone. Goodbye. Oh, before I go, while I was editing this video, a news poll came out with the coalition down and One Nation up to 8%. So this sort of goes with the idea that the One Nation Party has a good chance of picking up seats in the Senate in SA, WA, and New South Wales. But this poll was conducted before the coalition made their epic, groundbreaking, awesome mortgage tax break policy. So maybe that will really change the game, and it might, you know, boost the coalition primary vote. I do think that probably they have bottomed out a bit. I think that they can only go up from here, but I guess we'll see. Oh, and on Thursday evening, I will make a post about this, but I'm planning to do a live stream with Anglo Election Insights going over every House of Representatives seat, and we might also talk a little bit about the Senate too, and just give sort of our observations about everything, and then also sort of talk to you guys in the audience, because I'm sure you guys have something to add to a lot of the seats that we discussed as well. So see you then on Thursday night at 8 p.m. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I probably will do another Senate prediction video closer to the election when we start getting like a ton of data rolling, and I'm still hoping that we're going to get another Redbridge MRP, but maybe I'm expecting too much. So we'll see. Goodbye, everyone.